Welcome back to the Brittany Hughes Show, everybody. Happy Thursday to you. It's been a fantastic week for America, a great week for Donald Trump, and frankly, a great week for Joe Biden, who woke up on Tuesday with a perfectly clear and empty schedule for the first time since, Sunday. So honestly, it's been a bit of a whirlwind, not just because of all of the inauguration stuff and all of the transition news and all of that happens whenever we switch from one president in this country to another, but because Trump managed to get more done in the first 5 hours of his presidency than Joe Biden managed to do in the past year, at least. And I'm kind of having to switch gears here from covering news about a president whose chief accomplishment every day was making it up a flight of stairs or finding the end of a sentence without forgetting what he was talking about, to now covering a president who signs executive orders and makes cabinet nominations while simultaneously answering, off-the-cuff questions from the media, which Joe Biden never did, and, a president who doesn't call a lid at 4 p.m. because it's his bedtime. So this has kind of taken some adjustment here. We have entered a brave new world when it comes to presidencies in this country. The left, however, has not adjusted at all. They are unwilling to, if incapable of it. Neither, of course, have their media lapdogs. They're still singing from the same off-key hymnal that they've been peddling for years now, because apparently getting walloped in a national election was not enough to teach them that maybe, just maybe, Americans are sick and tired of their same old broken record just scratching away. So, of course, one of the first things that Donald Trump did when he got into office was start getting control of the border. And when I mean getting control of the border, I mean literally from minute one. Immediately after noon on Monday, in just about the same moment that Donald Trump finished saying, "So help me God," the CBP One app went offline. And I love that this is one of the first things that happened, because I think it draws some serious attention to this app that I have now been screaming about for the better part of 2 years. This was something that I think you knew about if you really paid attention to reporting, particularly from conservative media sources regarding the border, but I'm not sure that most Americans actually know much about it, much less understand what it is. So like I have detailed before on this show, the CBP One app actually started under President Donald Trump as something completely different. But it wasn't used in the same way that it was under Biden. Under the Biden administration, CBP One became a system by which migrants, border crossers, who were planning on coming into the United States illegally, who had already masked up in Mexico, could queue up at the border, and they could log into this app on their smartphone that, they're too poor to live in their home country of, Venezuela or El Salvador or whatever, but they all have smartphones. And they could book an appointment at a port of entry as an asylee claimant. So it circumvented the normal illegal alien crossing process that they were all planning to go through, and gave them a loophole to claim legal entry. And I say legal with air quotes here, because that's not at all what this was. Literally nothing at all about their coming into the United States unlawfully changed whatsoever, except that instead of getting dumped on the banks of the Rio Grande by a human trafficker in a flotation device and then walking up to a border agent and saying, "I claim asylum," instead, they were using an app to virtually line up at the border and then come in and claim asylum. Now, they don't actually qualify for asylum, the vast, vast, vast majority of these people, because under the definition of asylum, under federal law, you must be fleeing persecution based on your nationality, your religion, your political affiliation, one of several very, very, very specific characteristics. Being from a poor country, or your economy sucks, or the gangs are out of control, while terribly unfortunate, does not qualify you for asylum. As a matter of fact, the vast majority of people who claim asylum and are allowed into this country and given notices to appear in court are actually later found not to qualify for asylum, and they are ordered removed from this country. The problem is most of them don't actually show up for their hearing, so they're given a ruling in absentia, or even if they are there, it's not like they're immediately taken into custody and then deported. They must self-remove, which of course they don't do. So the idea of coming into the border and claiming asylum really doesn't have a whole lot of merit in reality. It's just a thing that you say when you come into the country illegally so that you can then be let go with maybe at best a notice to appear in court years down the road, And then nobody ever follows up or gives a crap after that. So, of course, you commit a heinous, if you commit a heinous crime in one of the few places that are still willing to kick your butt out, maybe you get deported. But if you go to a place like New York City or Los Angeles or one of these blue sanctuary cities, then you can be in violation of immigration law and commit all the crimes you want. And there's absolutely nothing anybody's going to do about that. And this app was directly facilitating that flow of people. Now you had 2 lanes to come into this country illegally. You had an app, or if you wanted to circumvent that and not wait in Mexico for a few extra days or weeks, then you just came in the old-fashioned way. Either way, same result. You're led into the United States, you're given a notice to appear in court, and then nobody ever hears from you again. This was the system under Joe Biden. So this app, which was a loophole at best in the nation's immigration laws and which completely circumvented the, refugee cap set by Congress, which is more akin to what people fleeing poverty or war-torn or gang-infested nations might qualify for, and frankly, even that I think might be a stretch. It circumvented those caps. It allowed millions, literally millions of migrants to at least identify momentarily as asylees in order to get into the country, regardless of whether or not they actually qualified for asylum. Because again, they're given a notice to appear in court. The hearing is usually scheduled for 5, 6, 7 years down the road. And by then, people have lost track. Nobody actually cares. So, under this app, 1,450 illegal aliens were allowed to use the app and cross into the United States per day. 1,450 per day. I'll let you do the math on this one. This equates to hundreds of thousands of people a year, millions of people over the span of Joe Biden's presidency. And not only is this super important to understand because you start to realize just how many illegal aliens Joe Biden was importing during his 4 years in office, knowingly and on purpose, but you also have to understand that these are people who, without the use of this app, would have come into the United States unlawfully the old-fashioned way. As a matter of fact, when this app was initially rolled out back in the beginning and expanded under the Biden administration, there were glitches in it that actually made it really hard to use, and migrants were getting frustrated and fed up with trying to use it. So there was an uptick in illegal alien crossings at the border because people were getting tired of trying to use this app and figured, screw it. I'm getting into the United States either way. I'll just hop across the river and surrender to a border agent. The only difference with this app was that it made it slightly more convenient and less deadly, which means that the millions of migrants who came across via this app, were counted, at least under the Biden administration's calculations, as lawful entries. Not because they had any legal right to be here, not because they were deemed to be an actual asylee, because they're not, but literally because they used this app. So when illegal alien border crossings appeared to drop under the Biden administration, you remember that? And Karine Jean-Pierre would blather about how Joe Biden is getting the border under control, and the media were praising him and accusing conservative media of peddling fake news by saying that the border was actually wide open. They were pointing to artificially deflated numbers thanks to this app recategorizing illegal aliens as legal entries because they clicked a button on their smartphone before they came in. They were fudging the math to make it look like border crossings had decreased when in fact the same number, if not more people, were actually coming across. They were just being siloed differently in the reporting statistics. And that never-ending turnstile ended on Monday. Thank God. Much to the chagrin, of course, of pro-illegal alien groups and, the sobbing of would-be illegal aliens and the leftist media who don't care a whit about the tears of parents who have lost children to criminal aliens under Biden's time in office. Nobody cares about them. Nobody cares about Laken Riley's mom. Nobody cares about, mothers that have had to bury their children because they were hit by a drunk driver who was driving without a license because he shouldn't have been in this country in the first place. Then again, to be honest with you, why anybody would even want to come to the United States right now where Trump is sure to revoke the rights of women to own property and have credit cards, and he's going to bring about the second coming of the Third Reich or whatever, so the media have told us, is absolutely beyond me, probably for the best. I mean, frankly, you're kind of wondering if this country is such a fascist, hateful, white supremacist dumpster fire. I'm not sure why all of these leftists are so intent on everybody and his brother being allowed to come here. They should all be standing at the border with signs reading, turn back now and save yourself. But it's not a dumpster fire, and they know that. This is the greatest country on planet Earth, and everybody should want to come here. And that's fine. But there's a way to do it and a way not to, and hopping the Rio Grande with your toddler in tow is the way not to. And Donald Trump putting an end to this god-awful app that facilitated over 1,400 illegal alien crossings in violation of federal immigration law every single day not only helps put a stop to this endless flow of illegal immigration into this country, it also ends one of the biggest and most harmful government lies that was perpetrated under the Biden administration. Of course, the leftist media and all of the liberals had an absolute coronary over this. They immediately ran down to the border and they did their best AOC impression, and they stood weeping at the gates as they stuck cameras in the faces of migrants who had their CBP1 app appointments canceled on that day. Interesting isn't it, by the way, that Monday, in addition to being Inauguration Day, was Martin Luther King Day. As a federal holiday. All federal employees are off work, kids aren't in school. If you want to talk to somebody at the DMV or the IRS or some other government agency that you need to get a hold of as an American citizen in need of, services in the country where you live and pay taxes, you couldn't do that on Martin Luther King Day. The vast majority of things were closed. But because, they were all kinds of upset that their appointments to circumvent the legal immigration process into this country had been shot to smithereens. All of these illegal aliens who were somehow able to have, appointments to get into this country. Again, you couldn't, as an American citizen, contact the DMV to go renew your license or whatever you needed. But all of these illegal aliens totally able to make apps at the border or appointments at the border via this app to come into the country. Funny how that works, right? I mean, under leftists, under Joe Biden, there was an entirely different set of rules and services and things being made available to illegal aliens at the expense of Americans and taxpayers. Things available to illegal aliens violating our laws coming into this country that you as an American could not access. Unbelievable. And the left is down there at the border, and they managed to find one woman in particular. Here she is just sobbing away while the camera is snapping in her direction. I will say this woman ended up becoming like the poster child for Trump's alleged cruelty to migrants. We're back to that riff now. I mean, everybody from NBC to CNN, and everybody in between ran with the story that Trump was keeping out all of these poor asylum seekers out of the country, and he's so mean for shutting down this completely illegal app. Just goes to show you that if we had any spines in Congress over the past 4 years, maybe we would have gotten this program well under control before all of this. But it took Donald Trump getting inaugurated to finally put an end to this madness. And here's this woman just sobbing away because she's now realized that she can't cut the line and force her way into this country in total disregard for our laws and all of the people who've been waiting to legally immigrate to this country ahead of her. It's just this one woman over and over again, by the way, this one woman. It starts to feel a little bit staged, frankly, if you ask me, a little bit put on. But can I just say for the record, in case anybody actually cares about migrants and immigration and the ability of people to come into this country, nobody is saying that these people cannot come to the United States of America. No one is saying that. No one is saying that this woman can't come be a citizen of the United States of America. I don't think that's actually what she wants. I don't think that's what the vast majority of people who come into this country illegally want. If you cared about being a part of this country and becoming a citizen of this country, then you would also care about the laws of this country that make it the kind of place that you would want to come to. So when we talk about this country being built by immigrants, we're not talking about people crossing the border illegally and setting up shop and never learning the language and, who really don't give a crap about assimilating. We're talking about people who legally migrate from other countries because they want to be an American, not because they want to be a Guatemalan living in America. Big difference. But nobody is saying that these people can't come here. They're just going to have to do it the legal way. You're going to have to file the paperwork and begin the process of legally entering the United States, not come by some smartphone app that some progressive Democrat president duct taped together to try to circumvent the immigration process to save face during a border crisis that he created. I mean, the actual legal way that is set up under federal law that dictates and outlines in very clear terms who qualifies for asylum, who qualifies as a refugee, and who qualifies as any other kind of immigrant. Nobody's keeping these people out. They're just saying you can't kick in the back door and park it in the living room with both middle fingers in the air while we pay for all your crap. But we're all supposed to sob uncontrollably for this woman and others like her because for some reason leftists have decided that we should be the only country in the entire world that doesn't enforce our borders or give a rip about who comes into our country, including from other countries that hate us and wish to do us harm. Interesting. I don't weep for this woman. Let me just make that abundantly clear. I do not weep for those who are no longer able to come into this country illegally via an app launched under a president who had no problem importing the entire third world and didn't blink twice when some of these people raped, murdered, assaulted, and robbed other immigrants and American citizens. Not even a little bit. The only reason that I feel at all sorry for this woman is if she was in fact convinced by the left that this was the right way to come into the United States. But I don't feel an ounce of sympathy for the fact that people will no longer be allowed to come here under the guise of asylum, get set up in taxpayer-funded hotels while there are homeless Americans sleeping on the street, including thousands of veterans. They'll get 3 square meals a day and a prepaid, credit card while Americans are going hungry, can't qualify for home loans while illegal aliens are able to, sign up for programs. Tax-paying Americans are struggling to afford groceries while illegal aliens are getting meals cooked for them in hotels that we pay for. Heck no, I don't feel bad at all. In fact, if you didn't weep for people like Lake and Riley's mother who showed up at the scene of her daughter's murder and had to learn that her child had been assaulted and strangled and her skull bashed in by a criminal alien who shouldn't have been in this country in the first place and who had already been arrested at least once, if that didn't move you to outrage, you can spare me the big fat crocodile tears over these people not being able to shove their way ahead of the line and come here regardless of who they are and what threat they might pose. You weep for criminals, I weep for victims. We are not the same. And thank God, at least now we have a president who understands that. But they never learn, do they? They never learn. It's actually kind of hilarious how unimaginative the left can be. They think that every fake pronoun in the book is real. They come up with an infinite number of imaginary genders, but they can't find new ways of attacking Trump because, as we've seen over this past week, they're back to recycling the same playbook that they've run for the past decade now, which frankly I think is a large part of what cost them the election. Elon Musk is now a fascist Nazi who throws out Hitler salutes. That was a fun one earlier this week. Here's a man who's been vocally in favor of the Jews. Here's a man who visited Israel following the October 7th terror attacks by Hamas, who has a touch of the tism, by the way, and who's known for being very excitable during Trump events. He jumps around the stage and he gets all pumped up whenever anybody mentions the idea of men going to Mars and such. And, that's Elon Musk. When he's excited, he's very exuberant and he kind of dances around like a little kid. That's just part of what makes him him. This is part of what people who were, who were diagnosed with Asperger's, or at least what we used to call Asperger's, this is the way that they often are. This is not surprising to anybody who understands this. But to the left, who likes to make mountains out of molehills and who likes to see a Nazi in every shadow, this was a Nazi salute right here.
There are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important, some are not. But this one this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you.
Because you know what? If one were a Nazi in disguise, if you were actually trying to bring back the Third Reich or whatever, this is exactly what you would do, right? Very covert. You'd do a straight up Heil Hitler right there on the national stage at one of the largest, most televised events on the entire globe. Okay. And of course, the left have absolute apoplexy over this, just came out of the woodwork like cockroaches to accuse Elon Musk and, of course, Donald Trump, obviously, of being Nazis here, because at this point they see like little Himmlers running around all over the place. It's like their own special form of progressive schizophrenia. AOC lost whatever passes for her mind, and it was glorious.
You're going to do a Sig Heil? You're going to do a Hail Hitler? or their rebrand a Roman salute from behind the presidential seal of the United States of America, it's on. It's on.
A Hail Hitler? A Sig Heil? Tell me you don't know much about World War II without saying you don't know much about World War II. Sig Heil? Is that like a new 9mm that shoots little ice balls? What is that? A Sig Heil? This woman is off her nut. And then she starts ranting, it's on, it's on. Like she's been practicing her spirit fingers as heading to a cheer off. Like, what is this, a 10th grade pep rally? It's on. Have they made an mRNA vaccine for Trump derangement syndrome yet? Maybe we should mandate that, because this is dangerous to have this kind of stupidity on the loose, frankly. I mean, what I find a little bit funny about this bit is that liberals are currently losing it over Elon Musk doing what is clearly, to any honest person, a hand gesture that was meant to emphasize his heart going out to the crowd. There's a reason the media is selectively editing that clip and didn't play his words, because it makes the whole thing perfectly clear. But we're supposed to believe it's a Nazi salute because we're being told so by the same people who spent the past year telling us that screaming "globalize the intifada" and "from the river to the sea" just means you're a humanitarian. I mean, we had Jewish college students barricading themselves in libraries and getting assaulted on the quad and being asked not to come to class because there were anti-Semitic leftists on the main campuses of Ivy League universities literally calling for the death of the Jews. And that was somehow okay, but our brains are supposed to explode because Elon Musk threw his arm out during a speech, and we're supposed to see a Nazi in that. You have to wonder if these people are so dumb that they don't hear themselves. It is astounding, truly. So as you can see, nothing at all has changed from 4 years ago, from 8 years ago. After being completely curb-stomped in the election, leftists are leaning into screaming about fascism and Nazis and Donald Trump being a white supremacist and all the same tired crap that didn't work before, and it sure as heck isn't working now. And in the meantime, we have, while they're accusing Trump and the nearly 78 million Americans who voted for him of being evil, genocidal, fascist maniacs, leftists are busy acting like evil, genocidal, fascist maniacs. For one thing, they're awfully mad they might not be able to maim and castrate children like they want to. As one of the first moves he made after taking office, Trump signed an executive order that should go down in history as one of the most unnecessary, ridiculous wastes of time in this country, but one that has been made necessary because leftists are too stupid to be allowed to tie their own shoes, and that was to declare that at least as far as the federal government is concerned, there are only two genders, male and female. You could just take this EO, which is officially entitled the Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government, and right at the top of it, for filing purposes, just write the word "duh" in giant capital letters. We'll call it the "duh" EO. Much simpler. Humans are comprised of two genders, distinctly different, male and female. And what I absolutely love about this EO, on top of stating definitively that there is male and there is female and they are not the same, nor is there some spectrum of whatever else in between, depending on however you feel, what I love is the phrasing here. Here's how it reads. Female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male meaning a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. A person belonging at conception. Not only does this EO affirm the existence of two distinct, separate, non-interchangeable genders, it declares personhood as existing at the moment of conception. Which, of course, anybody familiar with biology understands. Any person, on the planet that understands basic science knows that a human being is a distinct human being with their own unique, never before seen on the Earth planet DNA, which does codify them as either male or female, beginning at the very moment that they are conceived, regardless of when, how, or to whom they are conceived. They are a person and they have a gender, and it is beautiful to see an administration at the highest level of our government that is willing, finally, to affirm that. At the same time, leftists who have spent the past week mourning the loss of not only their sanity, but the passing of Cecile Richards, who was the president of Planned Parenthood from 2006 to 2018, and who oversaw the murder of 4,221,000 234 unborn children, according to the organization's own annual reports. But sure, Donald Trump is the genocidal nutbag who wants to kill people and is a danger to children. Sure. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The hypocrisy here. But this is apparently what the bishop of the National Cathedral thinks. Did you see this? Best clip of the week. I'm sorry. This whole week has been so full of fantastic and hilarious moments, but this one for me, I think, takes the cake. Bishop here, air quotes, Marian Edgar Bood took her moment behind the pulpit to lecture Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance on the merits of showing mercy to illegal aliens and people who want to castrate and mutilate gender-confused children during what I can only assume she would describe as a church service, but was truly anything but. So this was during the interfaith service of prayer for the nation at the National Cathedral on Tuesday, where this woman speechified on the virtues of gender bending and people living in the country in open violation of immigration law. Here was that moment.
In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples.
I have to say, I probably watched this clip like 20 times and just like zoomed in on everybody's faces because this was gold. Trump was completely unbothered by all of this. His reaction was hilarious. I mean, he looked about as ruffled as a polar bear standing in front of an air conditioning unit. This didn't bother him one bit. Vance is over there trying so hard not to roll his eyes. Props to his wife for not meeting his eyes because I think the dude would have just completely lost it. Laura Trump looks like she's about to crack up. Usha Vance and Melania Trump both look like they would be more interested in a 4-hour PowerPoint presentation on the growth rate of grass. And this is all coming from a woman, a bishop, right? A self-described leader of the church, also known in my definition as a heretic, who during her little tirade here also referred to now former President Joe Biden as a good Catholic, despite his open support for infanticide and his total disregard for God's design for men and women. So if you were looking to this woman as a good bellwether for theological truth, I would most certainly keep your options open. This was some absolute unbiblical nonsense right here. This was this woman opening her mouth and Satan coming out. But this is what leftists want. They want to be able to castrate and mutilate children, many of whom are autistic or who have experienced trauma. They want to shove porn on kids without their parents knowing in, government-controlled, publicly funded indoctrination camps that you are forced to send your kids to if they have their way. They want to be able to butcher kids through the 9th month of pregnancy for any reason. Every single Senate Democrat this week, by the way, in case you missed it, voted against the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, which would require doctors to provide medical care in the event of a baby being born alive following a botched abortion. You're talking about infants who survived their own murder attempt and who are laying on a table being denied medical care because they aren't wanted, because they aren't convenient, because some adult in the room has decided that their life is expendable. And every single Democrat in the United States Senate stated definitively on the record this week that they are okay with that. They have no qualms at all with repeat criminal aliens being allowed into this country or being let out of prison back onto the streets of this country and going on to murder young women or T-bone soccer moms while drunk as a skunk running a stop sign, which is why it is a relief to so many Americans that the days of this nonsense just running rampant over the rest of us who are screaming from the rafters that none of this makes any sense, none of this is healthy to a civilized society. It will literally bring about the destruction of this country. And at least for the next 4 years, that is at an end. In addition to starting to get control over the border and bringing some sanity back to this gender-bending debate, Trump has also started gutting expensive and openly racist DEI programs across the country. He rescinded an executive order that dates back to Lyndon Johnson that allowed for affirmative action in the federal hiring process, which forced agencies to hire people based on the color of their skin rather than their merit and ability to do the job. The State Department has officially nixed the flying of gay pride and Black Lives Matter flags from our embassies, which ends that global embarrassment. Trump pulled us out of the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Accords, which are just two giant money sucks where we were dumping trillions of taxpayer dollars into global slush funds run by a bunch of foreign bureaucrats who had absolutely no problem cashing our checks and then turning around to lecture us on how awful we all are. So, not planning to cry over that one. He nixed Biden's EO, putting expensive and unconstitutional restrictions on vehicle manufacturing, including one that had mandated that electric vehicles make up 50% of all new cars by 2030. Never mind the lithium that has to be mined for those things in countries that exploit child labor, and the fact that all of those cars have to be plugged into a wall socket that then draws power from places like coal-fired power plants. If they're out of sight, then it must mean that these cars are clean and everything's fine. Then they crap out in cold weather, so they're no good to anybody. That giant virtue signal, that industry killing, freedom killing, economy busting nonsense is done, at least for now. The wins for American prosperity, individual liberty, and the free market have been rolling out on a conveyor belt this week. Like the I Love Lucy episode with all the chocolate. This has been fantastic to see, and we're only 4 days in, y'all. We are 4 days in. And the leftists and the biased, now neutered media can cry more. It's going to be fun to cover. I'm excited. Are you? With that, that's the Brittany Hughes Show for today. I hope you'll be back with me next Thursday. Head over to the Apple Podcast Store so you can hit subscribe on the Brittany Hughes Show. That way you won't ever miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe to the Newsbusters podcast with Tim Graham on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Got a whole lot headed your way. I'm pumped about it. In the meantime, I'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Not next week. Actually headed on vacation with my family. Very excited about that. Taking a break, taking the kids someplace fun. We're kind of pumped. But I'll be back here in 2 weeks. In the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic weekend and a blessed week ahead.